you all very much for still being here after that lunch. So I think we've got the envious position to be able to hold them for at least the next 20 minutes before the 3:30 itis kicks in. But yes, Aditi, with 20 minutes or 18 minutes left, I wanted to talk to you about some of the findings that we got, some of the initial findings, and focus on three key things that we found in the report. Right? The first being about development, or at least from the respondents, the three biggest issues that they've brought up, right, is development, career pathing, and talent mobility. Right? But what was also interesting was to be able to see the connections between these components. Right? So my first question, if you would allow, is as we start talking about development, what we've also realized is a lot of the participants de-link skills from development. I think it was at the World Economic Forum just recently that said now the half-life of skill is less than 5 years, and in 2 years, the half-life of skill will be 2 years. How do you see combining or decoupling development with skills?
Yeah, and thank you so much. And first of all, a very good afternoon to all of you, and thanks for having us here. And hopefully, we're going to have a very interesting next 20 minutes. So thanks so much for that question. And this is something we often grapple with within our own organization, right? So when we have conversations with employees, everybody says, we want to develop. And when you ask back saying, what have you really thought about or what have you really done about it, they give us a blank look. So I think that question is really pertinent because what's important for us to understand is that, the future of how we're looking at things hugely today depends upon what kind of skills we need to have, right? And that will actually determine from a future standpoint, various kinds of things that one can sort of do. So when we have development conversations, it has a wide range of things that gets coupled with it. And one of the most important things is sort of building that future-focused skills. And I think all this while, when people have really looked at development, they've always looked at it from a point of view of job changes, right? What role do I get into next? Not so much thinking about what experiences am I gathering as part of that process, or what skills am I building that will not just let me, do my current job in a great way or my next job in a perfect way, but actually help me enable to do much broader things within the organization. So as organizations, when we have now started having conversations with people, we are trying to link the development conversations to real skills that they need to build for themselves. Not with the lens of how do I get my current job be better, but also with a lens of what the future might lie for me. So I think it's important that we bring these things to the forefront and not just keep it as a mystery. And as I look at our internal organization structure, I think there's a role that the employee plays, there's a role that the manager plays, and then there is an enabling role that the organization plays in terms of putting infrastructure in place which will help develop these skills. So that linkage between, as you say, development and skills then becomes a lot more easier for people to envisage and work upon.
Wonderful. I like the combination or how you looked at building capability as part of building experiences. And I think that also links back to the new idea of employment, right? That it's not always about the next advantage I get. It's about building a broader experience base. So when there are changes in employment, I'm readily available for that. I think that's a very nice segue to the next point that comes up in the report, where we talk about internal mobility. Right? And internal mobility, whether it be a gig function or an extended project, or even just changing jobs, there are many technologies that are available out there, many, right? But we often hear that being a high power distance culture, right? This is, and we have to accept that Southeast Asia generally or Asia generally is an extremely high power distance culture, right? How do we now think about talent mobility? Because one of the biggest enemies of talent mobility is the manager themselves, right? So how does an organization start inculcating this behavior of mobility from an early stage, from a policy or philosophical idea to actually becoming something real?
Yeah. And I think this has become all the more pertinent with sort of the great resignation that we're seeing today. What I would start off by saying is that I think the first step, when we talk about talent mobility, is just redefining what that mobility really is. I think the traditional definition of talent mobility has always been, am I getting my next promotion or am I moving geographically? I think one of the things we've started doing internally is just broadening that definition of what talent mobility really is. It could just mean, an extended stretch assignment. It could be a job swap. It could be, a horizontal movement into a very different function. It could be something that you're doing for a short period of time as a project. So all these experiences that you gather as part of, so-called talent mobility will actually help you not just, do what you're doing from a current standpoint, but also build those experiences which make you a more versatile leader within the organization. So coming back to, your question, Sharma, as to how organizations can really support, I think one of the biggest mindset changes that need to happen is within the management. So today, we don't stop an employee to sort of look at roles outside the organization, even if it is, within a particular period of time. However, when there are internal mobility policies which restrict employees to apply for roles across organizations, that's when people really think, I'm better off looking something outside rather than looking inside. So I think we can definitely have policies which break some of those barriers of internal mobility. I think for businesses, it's extremely important. They measure everything in return of investment terminology, right? So I would say from a management standpoint, there are clearly two key takeaways or benefits that they can see. So one is higher employee retention. It's always good to lose someone to another business within the organization rather lose someone outside. The cost of replacement is extremely high. And at least if the person's not benefiting your team or your business, is at least part of the entire organization. The other thing is highly motivated and engaged workforce, because people do believe that they are getting opportunities within the organization, right? And they are getting those opportunities in various forms and shapes, which in the long run is helping them develop. So, sort of linking back to your question around development, if we clearly tie in those aspects of internal mobility along with development, then the employee also knows that there is an organizational imperative and an impetus towards that direction. Yes, it's a mindset change. I mean, managers are often not open to it. But I think slowly they're getting closer to reality that the workforce today is more about getting those experiences. And you really can't hold on to someone for years like you did in the past.
You're building amazing segues for me, so thank you so much. In fact, in one of the roundtables we were having with People Matters on this, in one of the biggest frustrations that HR people have in trying to inculcate this behavior, is this logic that we never have a policy for how long it takes before you can leave the organization, but we very often have policies on how long it takes before you can join a different department, right? Yeah. And if you don't understand that problem, then this becomes a huge issue. Now, I think with not much time left, let me ask maybe perhaps my last question here. Career pathing. 82% of the respondents in this report had spoken about career pathing being their priority for 2023, right? Now, this very often goes back to, I think it was in 97, McKinsey wrote an article that said the war for talent would go on for the next 50 years. And then in 2004, they wrote another article that said, sorry, the war for talent is over, talent has won, right? And organizations who understood that the pendulum have swung toward employee owning the power of employment have seen to have gotten the advantage in this journey, right? So when we talk about career pathing, it is very often linked very closely to this ideology of giving up power, right? I, as the employer, no longer own the power of employment. I share this power with the employee. How do you see this journey? And it is a journey, right? Because you've got to go through slowly. How do you see this journey happening for us in and around Southeast Asia over the next few years?
Yeah. I think some of those traditional definitions of careers and what is short term and long term have changed over the years, right? At least when I started my career, people would say, "Where do you see yourselves 10 years from now?" I rarely ask that kind of a question in an interview today because I don't even know where someone would see himself or herself 3 years down the line. Right, so I think what has happened over a period of time is that, one, of course, we've given a lot of importance to the fact that employees need to own their own career. And hence, we also put a lot of focus on making sure that someone who's looking at real development within the organization or either outside the organization is constantly thinking of their own sort of careers and what career paths might be. So a few things I would say in that is one, the fact that the entire organization needs to accept the fact that perhaps very, very long-term careers are no longer here to stay. Right? So people, every time they get into a job, are only looking at, am I building new skills here? Am I honing the skills that I have? Am I sharpening what experiences that I've got? And how does this experience help me gain my next job? So the constant endeavor, and I'm not just generalizing this with the millennials, but I think it's the entire workforce today who's thinking of, I'm doing my job really well today, how do I get to my next role? And hence, careers have now become more around, short-term experiences that I can gather, which will help me do better in my sort of next role. And I think that philosophy change that has happened is something that organizations need to embrace, managers need to embrace. Having said that, I'm just going to go back to the first point we made, that also should help employees constantly keep thinking of how do I keep myself relevant, right? Because just having the skills that I have for today is not going to get me to the next step. So if I were to look at a slightly more longer term career or look at a shift in career, a constant hat that I need to wear is, do I have that learning agility to keep thinking of newer ways of adding to my skill set that I have today?
Being mindful of time, my last question. What are you hacking in talent intelligence today at Citi?
Okay, I was actually looking forward to listening from you and seeing, what I should learn. I think we are really struggling to, I would say not struggling, but the challenge that we have that we're trying to solve is how the fundamental way in which people are looking at careers, right? I think that's something that we are really trying to grapple with, because everybody is looking at, and one of the things that we've been hearing quite a bit is that you can't have a one-size-fits-all kind of an approach. So people are expecting bespoke solutions for everybody in the organization. And in large organizations like us, the challenge is always, how do you make everybody feel special, that we are doing something for them? So it's a balance, a very fine balance between things that you do on a very individualistic, bespoke basis versus how do you make sure that there is consistency across the organization. And the most powerful tool that we're trying to use there is, of course, data. We have the power of data, which I think as a function, there is enough and more that we can do around using them. So I'm really looking forward to your report and see what we can gather from them. 7 days from now, you're going to get a ping from me, having sort of read the short report. And congratulations and thanks for initiating it.
Thank you. I think as our concluding thoughts, if you will indulge me for me to invoke metaphorical hyperbole, that there's a story I really, really enjoy. So my favorite orator is Neil deGrasse Tyson, an astrophysicist. In one of his books, he speaks about how a seafarer is sailing, gets lost, and you will see this guy gets lost quite a bit. Columbus gets lost, goes to an island. He's running out of food, so he goes to these islanders and he says, "Please give me some food. I need to start my journey again." The islanders turn around and say, "Sorry, we don't have enough food for you. Only have food for us." Now, he is an astrophysicist, also understands the moons, the skies, the stars. He knows there's an eclipse coming. So he tells the islanders, "If you don't give me your food, I will tell my God to take away your moonlight." They, of course, don't believe this, right? Suddenly, one day, the moonlight disappears. They all freak out, they run, they give him the food he needs. And as he's leaving, he says, because you've given me my food, I will tell my God that you are nice and to give you back your light, right? The eclipse passes, the light comes back on. And in that story, he speaks about how the kings and the generals of the world have a very close consort with the astrophysicist of the world. And I take that analogy and I say the CEOs and the presidents and the business leaders of the world have a very close consort to HR. So as we understand the stars of the sky, the people that work for us better, we now become a lot more important as an advisor to the business. So with that, thank you so much, Aditi, and thank you all for having us.